baby boomer fans. We are Jackie and Janine, the Pfeiffer sisters, and love to talk about the 1950s, inviting you to reminisce with us as we explore experiences of that decade. Grab your favorite malt or Green River. Make sure you are wide awake and get ready to be inspired about the 1950s. Welcome to the 1950s Fun Chat. Hi, friends. Thank you for joining us. Another great day of modern history from the 50s is about to unfold, and from another guest. And, a lot of times we feature folks from North Dakota on our Fun Chats because that's our home state. That's where we, the background and the story of our book, While the Windmill Watched, A Slice of Rural America in the 1950s, all occurred. So, Jackie, let's get going with this chat.
Why, let's do that. But first of all, folks, please look at the bottom, that purple banner. It has www.whilethewindmillwatch.com. So please go there for all sorts of information about the authors, your hosts today, the vendors where you may obtain the book, where we might be appearing, book signings, etc. And then all the previous 1950s Fun Chats. And this is number 191. So you have many hours if you care to. Just open your computer and listen to the recent history of the 1950s. Now, I mentioned the book, and as Janine did as well, While the Windmill Watched, A Slice of Rural America in the 1950s. And we'd like to have guests talk about those 1950s as well as the decades before and after. So we'll get started, because today we're going to hear from a man who has resided in both rural and urban setting in the heart of North Dakota's gas and oil business in and near Williston, North Dakota. He's the middle of 5 children. Chuck Wilder was born in 1954, graduated from high school in Williston in 1972, traveled across the state to North Dakota State University, and returned to Williston with a degree in agriculture with an emphasis in horticulture. Well, after working for a few years, Chuck again traveled across the state, but this time a little bit north of NDSU, Fargo, North Dakota, and he went to the University of North Dakota. This time he returned to Williston as an attorney, and he served many years in the Attorney General's office, and he even extended a special title because he worked in that office. So he met Robin, his wife, at NDSU, and they married in 1992. She passed away in 2000. They had no children, but Robin opened the business called the Books on Broadway, which has been operating for 33 years. Although Chuck is officially retired, he still manages the bookstore, and he's really quite involved in it. So, Chuck, we welcome you to the 1950s Fun Chat.
Thank you. And I'd like to make a plug for your book. We've sold the book here in the store, and it's a very good book. It shows you and your sister's life in Minokan, North Dakota. You grew up on a farm, and you're a few years older than I am, but your reminiscences they're very familiar to me.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. Mm-hmm. So you, as you mentioned, you were born in the mid-50s, 1954. So this is a broad question, but can you recall anything about the decade of the 50s that was special? And granted, you were only 6. Well, you weren't very old when you had a life on the farm, but you told us that you can remember something from about when you were 2.5.
Yeah. I can. They weren't really exceptional memories, but I remember one memory. My parents, they had gotten a huge Santa Claus, and I remember that in the living room because it was probably larger than me, but there was this huge Santa Claus. And then I remember going out to my grandparents' farm. It was in Hardscrabble Township. You should note that name because in Western North Dakota, we had, that was, that area. In Western North Dakota, we're more susceptible to droughts and things like that. And Hardscrabble Township was started and was named after that period in North Dakota when they were forming the state.
Ah,
No, and I remember. Let's see, what else? I remember riding in my parents' car with my two older sisters. Yeah. One thing that I really remember is when television came to Williston.
oh, yeah.
I was I was in we were living in town at that time, and in about 1964, 65, my parents built on the outskirts of Williston. They got 19 acres, and so when we moved out there, we all got some ponies and we had some cattle, and we had a regular little farm there.
Okay.
So I know about making hay and things like that, and
So,
shelling manure.
yep.
You know that.
Did you have chickens? Did you have
Yeah,
chickens?
we had chickens. Yeah, yeah.
So you
Yeah,
had to
went to
gather
games.
eggs?
What? Pardon
Did
me?
you have to gather eggs, clean the
Yeah,
chicken
yeah,
house? Mm-hmm.
yeah. And I remember gathering eggs out of my grandparents' farm. My grandmother taking me out to the chicken coop, and she said, "You're very quiet, and you lift the chickens up so that you're not disturbing them, and you feel under there if there's any eggs." And yeah, yeah. So I collected eggs. My
Did you ever
grandmother,
did you
she
ever
would
get
make me she would carry the pail. She'd make me carry the pail of
okay.
eggs. I felt really important.
Yes. Did you ever get pecked by a hen when you were trying to get under her? What to gather
We
eggs?
didn't really have to because my grandmother, she didn't have a lot of chickens, but the chickens, they were familiar with my grandmother. And so,
Oh,
and that's what it is. If they know you, they'll let you put your hand under them and you can see if they've got eggs or not.
yeah, you
Did
had
you
nice
collect
chickens.
eggs? Did you
We
did you
didn't.
collect
All
eggs?
of our chickens weren't that nice.
Oh,
Sure.
some of them were, most of them were.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, if you
Yeah.
had an interest in horticulture, then when you went to NDSU, did you have a garden on this farm? Your parents'
Oh
farm?
yeah. Oh yeah.
Tell
My
us about
mother
that.
was my mother was really big into gardening, and she had probably about an acre-sized garden,
Oh, wow.
and it was in two places. One area we raised sweet corn, and the other potatoes, and then in the other the garden that was closer to the house, we were raising like beets and peas and beans and tomatoes. Raised a lot of tomatoes,
Mm.
and my mother was always canning and all that, and yeah, it was pretty neat. But I remember I got an interest in plants when my dad showed me this jade tree, and I was probably maybe 4, maybe 5, and the leaves they came out, 2 there and then 2 in the other place, and that really fascinated me. And you know what jade trees are, don't you? It's a type
Those-
of plant. It's a succulent
yeah,
plant,
yeah.
and we would. My dad taught me how to root those, and so I was rooting those plants, and I would sell them. My dad, he had people they wanted a plant, and so I'd sell them that plant.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was really interesting. But in my older years, before I graduated from high school, I'd pretty much put all those fascinations with those plants behind me. And then when I went to NDSU, gosh, they had a course in that stuff. And so I took it, and yeah,
Mhm.
it was
Yeah.
really fun.
Well,
And that's
if
why I
if you
majored in horticulture
did,
with a
living
minor in biology.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
living in Northwest North Dakota, where it was drier than normal, did
Mhm.
you have to do a lot of watering in your garden?
Well, we did maybe in the month of August,
Mm.
because that's where it would get really dry and the temperature outside would get quite hot.
Sure.
Um, and we would water some. We didn't water, I mean, it wasn't like um, the flowers around the house, but we'd have to water. And you'd have to water like the tomatoes, you'd have to water them more because in the heat of a day they'd absorb all this moisture, and then they were growing too fast, so you'd have to supplement them with water so they wouldn't get that black rot on the
Oh,
bottom. If you ever raise tomatoes,
Mhm.
they they get that.
Okay.
And so yeah, we watered, and gosh, and when the frost was coming, we'd have to harvest the squash and pick all the tomatoes and do all that. And yeah,
It-
I raised pumpkins and sold those. So
did your sisters enjoy gardening as well?
pardon me.
Did your sisters enjoy gardening?
One sister, well, my two older sisters, they didn't garden so much. My one sister, she didn't like to garden, and she didn't like to get out there with a hoe. And I know one time she had to go out there and hoe the cucumbers. And so she hoed a bunch of the cucumbers up. And so my parents, well, she's not going to work in the garden anymore.
Smart
My
girl.
older sister, she had cattle, so
Okay.
so she didn't. So I guess I was the one that was gardening the most, and my younger brother and sister, they kind of helped. Yeah.
Well,
So let's move on from the garden to the downtown Williston in the 50s and 60s. What was the vibe of the town, and were there what types of stores, and was there a train station? And tell us about that.
Williston, those are my earliest memories of Williston when we lived in town. I mean, we lived in the 1400 block of Main Street, so that was only like 14, well,
A little over a mile.
it was relatively close to downtown. The public library was right down there too, and we would go downtown. That was before the time of malls and that sort of thing. And Williston had a Woolworth store. They had Hedrick's department store, Penny's department store. They had a Montgomery Ward department store. And then they had, like women's clothing stores. There were maybe 7 of them. In men's clothing stores, there were 3 of those. There was maybe 4 drugstores downtown. It was really quite the collection of businesses downtown. And I would tag along, and yeah, it was quite neat, and occasionally Williston would have parades. Like, we're famous for our Band Day parade. It's Mother's Day weekend, and we'd invite bands. Williston would. They would have maybe 50, 60 bands in Band Day. Now today they only have about 20 bands in Band Day, but it was the original Band Day in North Dakota. Minot tried to have one, but theirs kind of petered out. Bismarck, they've got one, but they call it Band Night. And of course, that one is the one that it's flourishing because they've got all the shopping right downtown there. But yeah, we still have 20, 22, 23 bands a year here. And they've opened it up to a lot of floats and that sort of thing. Before, we used to get a lot of Canadian bands in Williston for Band Day. We'd have a lot of bagpipe bands. But yeah, the first Band Day, I think it's the 100th year now, the Band Day. So it's been going for a number of years.
Yes.
Did you? I remember one parade. We were in front of First Lutheran Church across the street from there, and I had no idea what the parade was, but I was like 4 years old, and the American Legion was having their state convention in Williston, and Richard Nixon was there. He was vice president, and he was campaigning for president. But I remember that parade, but I don't remember Nixon at all. But anyway.
Sure. Did you ever end up playing an instrument, a band instrument? What did you
I
play?
played the clarinet.
Okay.
I played from 5th grade through my senior year. Yeah.
That's good.
It was fun.
So you marched in your fair share of parades, probably.
Yes, I did. And then, the band, they'd get called on for playing in like homecoming parades and different things like that. Yeah.
Were there horses in those parades too? So you had to kind of watch where you were marching?
There were some horses, people that, like the Saddle Club, they had a contingent of horses. And then there were some people that raised some specialty breeds, and they would be marching, or they'd have their horses in the parade. Um, yeah, no, Williston was really a big parade town. Or when I was growing up, it was really fun, and we just had to walk maybe 3 blocks, 4 blocks from our house to where we could watch the parades. And yeah, it was a big deal when I was a little kid,
A lot of folks tell who grew up in the 50s tell us that time was such that it felt like there was so much freedom for children. Did you feel that way?
I think there was, because I think back on it now, we would walk down to the public library. I mean, me and my older sisters, and yeah, we walked. Our piano teacher lived close to downtown, and we would walk to her place and take piano lessons. And then our kindergarten was down there. Williston had a private kindergarten. They didn't have a kindergarten in the public system until in the 1980s. And so there were several kindergartens that they had in town. And I always tell people that's where I learned my manners, in there before I started school. Because they didn't have preschool and all those, and they didn't have kindergarten in the school system in those days.
Williston was on the Great Northern Railroad line.
Yes.
Do you remember much about the passenger trains that would come through, or did you ever ride on any?
Yeah, we rode on some of them. I remember my brother and we took a trip to New Rockford, and I was probably 6 or 7. And my mother was very nervous about us getting on the train, but we traveled there, no problem. And the conductors, they would kind of watch out for you too. I mean, I don't know what they did, but they were, they had to be kind of watching. And then, well, when I was in college, I'd ride the train. It was Amtrak then. And the depot in Williston was on the end of Main Street. The town moved out north from the depot, so we don't have like a south, First Avenue South, Second Avenue South. If you had those, you'd be in the river, the Missouri River, which flowed through Williston. But yeah, no, it was fun riding the trains. We didn't do a lot of it, but yeah.
Okay.
My dad, one of my earliest memories was my dad. He would take us kids and load us in the car, and then we'd drive around Williston on Sunday afternoons after Sunday school at the Methodist church or whatever. My dad would take us around. We'd go down to the depot and watch trains coming in, or we'd go out to Grover Augustine's because he was a house painter, but he had these cartoon scenes painted on his garage, and they were like Briar Rabbit and that. And then we'd go, where else would we go? We'd go out across the Missouri River Bridge. That was really scary because you'd look down and you'd see the whirlpools. And my dad said those whirlpools would suck you down. And so we were kind of afraid to go out there because you'd think, well, if the bridge caved in, then we'd sucked under. But there was a Tasty Freeze outside west of Williston. We'd stop there. It was a big deal, But I remember specifically going down, and we'd sit there and watch the trains come in and leave, and freight trains, a lot of them.
Is that Tasty Freeze still there?
No, it isn't, and the Dairy Queen isn't there either. But they've moved, and
different locations.
Yeah.
They're still there, but different locations.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Good. Okay. All right.
Yeah. It's a big deal. It's a big deal going there.
Oh, you bet.
I mean, it was way out on the west. It was out past the city limits on that hill west of Williston on the way to the bridge, But yeah, we'd usually stop there and get an ice cream cone.
So let's move on to probably closer to the 60s. You as a teenager, what kind of activities? Were there community dances and tell us about
They had community dances, but in those days, us kids, we all had our cattle, and so we had chores to do.
Mhm.
And I wasn't I wasn't so much to go out in high school. I mean, we didn't have driver's licenses then, and I think that was one thing my parents they were installing in us kids that we had to work, and um, we we well, there were different clubs we were involved in, but um, we didn't. I don't think we did an over amount of socializing once we moved out north. I
Yes.
mean, we had good friends and all that.
Yes.
Um, yeah.
Were you a 4-H'er?
No,
Were you in
my
4-H?
younger sister did.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I think if I had moved out there when I was a little younger, maybe I would have gotten involved in 4-H.
Mhm.
Hmm.
And the fairgrounds was right close to our property, so we were always up there when the fair was going on, and we knew kids that were in 4-H and
Hmm.
all that. They had quite an extensive 4-H program in those days here. Kids would raise calves and
Mhm.
sheep, and we'd watch those. Um, yeah, no, it was, um, yeah, um, let's see, 4-H. I'm kind of stumped here right now.
That's okay. I'd like to
One
move
thing,
on to Williston,
Yes.
just
mhm,
the town, the city, the town, you in general, because from what I understood that you told me before, that in that area there had been 3 oil booms.
yes,
Okay,
yes. The,
can you tell
the
us a little bit
first
timing
the
of those?
first oil boom, the first oil boom was in 1951. That's when oil was discovered in North Dakota, and it was discovered in the northwest part of the state by Tioga. But since Tioga was a small town, Williston was the county seat. All the land records and all that, the checking they would have to do, that was all done in Williston. And then we had an airport here. We had a commercial flight, a little flight. So all the oil executives, they'd fly in and out of Williston. And there were some oil wells. I think the closest oil well in those days was probably maybe about 25 miles from Williston, maybe 30 miles
Mhm.
around the Tioga area, north and south. And then there was some drilling up north in like Crosby and Divide County, but right around Williston, there wasn't any drilling for oil in that first oil boom. The second oil boom happened in 1978, 79. That was during the oil embargoes that they had and the governments had. And that spurred a lot of development in the Little Knife oil field, which is about 50 miles south of Williston. McKenzie County was real hot for oil in those days. And McKenzie County is right south of Williams County. Watford City is the county seat for that for
Mhm.
that area. And the way the way they were drilling in those days, you could imagine like the Williston Basin it being like a bowl, and they had all these layers in the bowl. And like when they first drilled here in the early 50s, and then in the 1980s too, they were drilling straight down into like the Madison, the Red River, and those different formations because they hadn't developed horizontal drilling, and they always knew there was oil in this Bakken. The Bakken is one layer in probably 15 different layers in the Williston Basin, and Williston is at the center of that basin. So that's why you got these layers in there, and out around Minot, the layers are very small and probably about 70, 80 miles west of here, they're very small. But in the Williston area, they're very deep, very thick layers. Anyway, they always knew there was oil in this Bakken formation, but it was a tight shale, and they would drill down, and at that time they had to rely on oil dripping into the well, and they couldn't access very much drilling. And so in this oil boom, it's a lot different oil boom where they can drill horizontally and they can frack, so they can drill this way. I think some up to like 5 miles in
Oh.
one direction, and they can drill all from one drill stem too. So environmentally, it's more efficient, if they can drill 5 different wells from one well head, and then they frack it, and that's where they put charges down, and it cracks up this oil shale, and then the oil will flow in, and that's that oil in the Bakken formation. It's very pure. It's real sweet crude, and that's why it's so important. The oil from the Madison Red River formations, it was always a sour oil and it always had to be refined. But this Bakken crude, it's very good. Anyway, so that's what's different about the 3 booms and this third boom. That's why the population has increased so much and it hasn't fallen back, so. Yeah.
Well, that's
And tell us how those booms then affected the infrastructure of the city of Williston.
Well, it affected them quite. Now, I don't remember in the first oil boom because I was born in 54 and oil was discovered in 1951. But the second oil boom, I remember that oil boom. They were building out of Williston, and then when that boom ended, it ended just like a light getting switched off. Oil dropped from about $35 a barrel down to like $7 in the span of about 2 weeks. And so it was a very devastating shutdown in the oil industry. The population of Williston during that second oil boom, it had reached up to about 25,000. But then when that boom died back, it died back to about 12,000. And now this latest oil boom, in 2010, the population of Williston was maybe 14,000. 6 years later, in 2016, it was 47,000 people. And there's a younger age here. In 2010, I use that because that's the latest census before the boom. In 2010, the average age of Williston was like 30 to 35,000. Oh, in 2010, it was 50 to 55,000. Now it is, its average age is like 30 to 35, and that's a baby making range.
Yeah.
And school age population has increased. Like in the bookstore here, we read to the first graders. My wife started this program back in the late 90s, and there were maybe 140 kids in it. And this Christmas, we did over 500, almost 600 students. And last year it was 400. So, I mean, school age population is still increasing here. And there were like 200 births a year here in 2010. And now it's pushing like 900 a year.
Holy
infrastructure. Yeah, the city's done really good. We've got a new airport here. We've got jet service into Williston. We've got direct connections from Williston to Denver and Williston to Minneapolis. Delta and United both fly into here. And then we've got it all 4-laned around Williston. There's what other things have happened? They built a new high school, but they're really short. They're building another elementary school here. It's the 6th or 7th elementary school here.
My goodness.
Amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really changed, and it's changed for the good too. Because the main population here from about 2007, maybe until this latest boom, primary population was Norwegian, because the area was opened up for homesteading so late. Williston was started in 1887, but they didn't open up the area for homesteading until like 2007. And that's when all the Norwegians came in.
What
I mean, like you got
1907? 1907? Not 2000.
1907. 1907. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And Yeah. So like the first church in Williston, well, the first population in Williston was servicing the railroad industry.
Mm,
And the first church formed here was in 1888. That
mm.
was a congregational church. The second church was the Methodist church, and that one is still going over here. And then we didn't get a Catholic church here until 1897. And still no Lutheran churches here.
Yeah.
And then the first Lutheran church came in 2000 or 1907. And
Oh,
now there's like 17 different Lutheran churches here.
okay.
Still no Catholic church, still no Methodist church here. At the Congregational Church, they went out of business about 2005.
Okay. Yes. Well, I'm going to leap ahead to your life as an attorney.
Okay.
Yes. And you were in the Williams County
Yep.
attorney office for a number of years before you
Yep.
ran for that political office to vie for Williams County attorney. What is it like to be a politician and to run for that office?
I don't like politics very well. I don't play the political game, you know. My dad, I really admire my dad. He had several businesses in town and he was very honest, and he formed the group that saved the old armory here. And that's an old structure. It looks like a castle. And he did this in the 1980s when they were tearing all these older buildings down around town. And he saved that building. It was built about 1914, and it was built like a castle. And all the larger cities in the state had a castle-like armory. This is the only one that's still in existence. The one in Fargo was torn down, the one in Grand Forks, Jamestown, Bismarck, Carrington, Minot, they've still got theirs, but it's been modified so extensively that if you look at it, you can see where it was kind of that castle type building, but it's used for a school warehouse now. But Dickinson, they had one. All the larger cities in the state had them, and they were all built about 1914, 1915. Anyway, they're really neat. I've got some photos here if you want to see what it looks like. It's a very neat building.
Speaking of photos in your store, it's just such an interesting store. Jackie and I were there last year.
For your book signing.
Yes.
Yeah.
For book signing, and we were just amazed with all of the fun things that you have there. Not only books, but you have children's toys. You have a coffee bar, and then so many items of interest that makes one just want to stand and try and keep their mouth together so it's not gaping as you look at all of the neat historic mementos that you have either on your walls or your ceiling or wherever. So we're going to take a little journey around Chuck's store, Books on Broadway, and Chuck will point out some of these items that are in his very neat store.
Don't forget
you can edit this. You can edit this thing, right?
Nope, I can't.
We'll try and do it.
This is for real.
Yeah.
And don't forget to tell us about the ceiling. Maybe start there.
Okay.
Oh yes.
Okay. Should we start in the front? We'll start in the front when you come in the front door.
Okay.
Yes, that'd be great.
Oh, that's a good picture there, though, of that item.
No, here.
Okay.
So Chuck, has your store always been two buildings then that were opened up?
What's that? I'm sorry.
When your store reminds me of maybe two neighboring stores with an opening in the wall. Would that be true? How it was?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway.
See, folks, look at all that fun stuff you can look at when you're in his store, Books on Broadway.
A lot hanging from the ceiling. Then you look up and there are pictures of historical.
This is a view when you first come in the store here. We've got all of our new bestsellers here. And this is a book that we feature here, Katie Ledecky.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
You know who she is? She
Yes.
was the Olympic swimmer, and
Yes.
she's got roots in Williston.
She has
Her
a grandma there.
Her grandmother lives here, and she's still living. She's like 99. Anyway, Katie's mother graduated a year after I did from high school in 1973. But
Was she,
anyway,
was she
she
a
was here
swimmer?
for a book signing last August.
Mhm.
We set it up within like 2 hours or 2 weeks because she got back from the Paris Olympics and she wanted to visit her grandmother. So we arranged for a book signing here, and we did a lot of phone calling. And the first, I ordered like 200 books. I figured that might be enough. And then I released the news of it to the media through the television station here. And then more people were calling. They wanted to review the book or they wanted to buy a book.
Mm-hmm.
So I ordered 300 more from Simon and Schuster. And then on the Monday before the book signing, which was on the following Saturday, I called Simon Schuster and I ordered 500 more
Oh, my
books.
goodness.
And we sold all 1,000 books.
Ah,
And that
everybody in
was,
North Dakota has.
that was the day, the Saturday before
Yeah.
Labor Day.
Cool, cool.
Was Katie's
We had the
mother?
book signing at
Okay.
the old library here. That's the James Memorial Center. And Teslin here, her and William, they arranged for the signing or the purchase of the books. And then we circled them around on the inside of the library. And Jeff Colburn, a good friend of mine, he was up there with Katie. He would open the books and she would sign them. And then everybody would go out the door on the new addition to the old library. And it really worked smooth. And I had a lot of good help there. And Katie's grandmother, she was able to come
Oh,
for a
good.
reception that we had before. But the swim team from Sydney, they came over and she took pictures with them. The two swim teams from Williston, they all met on the front steps. And then Minot sent a delegation of like 6, and Bismarck sent a delegation of 6. There just wasn't time to arrange.
Yeah.
But gosh, we ran out of books. And then Katie, she went to New York after that, right after Labor Day. And she was doing the talk show circuit. Simon and Schuster, they got her 200 more books.
Ugh.
She signed those. They shipped those back. So
Oh,
we
my.
Nice.
Must have had a
we
cramp.
sold probably 1,500 of that book.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very good book. Katie is such a down to earth lady. She's been coming in here since she was a toddler, and gosh, I'll never have another book signing like that
I
again.
guess not.
And then here we've got our regional and Western history section, and that's what I really like, because I'm really into the history of this area. Then we've got our Woolworth table here. We call that our
Mm-hmm.
Woolworth table because it's one of my earliest memories of downtown Williston was the Woolworth store.
Sure.
And if you know Woolworths, they had all these junky little toys, and I
Yeah.
might be calling them junky, but they're fun toys, you
Uh-huh.
know. And yeah. So anyway, then we moved back here, and we've got a lot of things on the ceiling here. We've got a lot of like wind chimes and different things like that. The front counters here. I have a thing where if we know people that are taking long trips to like Europe or someplace, we always have them send us a postcard from there. And anyway, there is a picture of my late wife up here.
Uh-huh.
This is a picture of her.
What inspired her to start a bookstore? Oh,
Yes. But she was a native of Fargo, and when we decided to get married, she had a career with U.S. West, and she was tired of the corporate rat race, and that was in 1992 or maybe 1990, And so we decided to get married. She was living in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And anyway, so when we decided to get married, she wanted to leave the Bell system. So we married, and she wanted to come to Williston because she knew my parents. And anyway, so anyway, when she came here, she she couldn't find a job in her area. Keep in mind, the population of Williston was only about 14,000 then.
Mhm.
And they kept trying to put her into secretarial positions, which I could type better than she could. But so anyway, at that time, women were expected to be teachers or nurses or something
Yes,
like that.
yes.
And Robin, she didn't want to do that. So I was working in the state's attorney's office at that time, and she always wanted to start a bookstore. So we budgeted it out for 2 years, and the store is still here 33 years later.
Wonderful.
Yeah, no, that's how Robin and I got the bookstore started.
Who was
Anyway,
her companion?
then over here, there's bestsellers and classics and children's books. And with the large increase in population and infants here, we sell a lot of children's books. When we started the bookstore, we maybe only had 2 bookcases where we had children's books, and now we've got how many? About 12,
Oh
something
my.
like that. Wouldn't you say, Tesla? 12? More, maybe 14, 15 cases of books. Anyway, then we carry a lot of toys. We carry a lot of rocks and minerals. Um, I've always had an interest in geology, and a lot of kids like it too. We've got buckets of minerals and stuff here. And then we've got these plastic animals. They're by Safari, and they're very accurate representations. And kids come in here and they pull them out and they play with them. And yeah, up there we've got a lot of like we've got Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and
The
we've
Disney.
got a Donald Duck and a Tinkerbell thing there. And a lot of these things are things that people have given me. So I've got a lot of stories that go with these different things that are on the shelves up here. If you had a couple hours, maybe we could scratch the surface on the stories behind all these things.
Wow.
But yeah, it's
And
neat.
then in the other room, you've got that beautiful coffee bar. Can you tell us show us it and tell us about that?
Yes. You can go over here. Most of our adult books, other than the classics and that, are over in this area here. And we've got some puzzles here. I've got a slide rule up there.
Oh yeah.
That was the computers of our day.
Yeah.
I remember when I started at NDSU, it was the first year they got calculators, and they had them in the chemistry department, and they were bolted to the tables in the library. They had 4 of them. And then maybe 3 years later, that's when you could get a calculator if you opened up a checking account at a store. Those are some of the things that I've experienced, in my life.
You bet.
When we started the bookstore, there wasn't any internet. We didn't have an internet. We didn't have a computer. We had microfiche for looking up books, and now we've got internet, and it's really changed a lot now.
Okay.
And then here, there's a lot of things up here. Anyway, then back in here is the coffee bar.
You even have some clothes there.
The coffee bar came from Fortuna, North Dakota, and it was in an ocean store. I mean, it wasn't in a bar, but it was in an ocean store. And the guy that brought it into Fortuna, he'd passed away in like 1958, but he had to spend a couple years at the state hospital. In those days, in the 50s, if you got dementia or they didn't have local facilities for dealing with those people. So they were housed at the state hospital. And that guy, he wasn't married. He didn't have any family there. So when they put him in the state hospital, they sold the coffee bar, or they sold the notion store to a couple up in Fortuna. And that couple, they didn't have any children either, and they operated it until 1958. And the older gentleman, he had died about 1974, something like that. And his wife was still living in the mid 90s, and they finally had to put her in the nursing home in Crosby. Then once her savings were exhausted, that's when all these things came up for auction.
Sure.
And that's when my late wife and I went there, and we saw that and we thought, so we bought it.
It's a beautiful piece.
Yes.
Had you ever thought about putting in a soda fountain?
We had, but we didn't have time at the time. And we still could do it. I don't know if we will or not, I'd like to, but
so Chuck, I noticed you had some.
I'm 71. I'm 71 now. So, I mean,
might be for the next owner.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
could be.
Chuck, I see you have some clothing there. Are you now selling clothing, sweaters or jackets?
Yeah, there's a guy in Sioux Falls. He's got a line of these different
North
garments.
Dakota apparel.
Like this one. This one is, what's that say? They're hunting for tourists in North Dakota. And anyway, see, the buffalo's got marks like they used to do in the old westerns, Anyway, this guy. These are made in Sioux Falls, and we've got them, and we've sold a number of them every year to tourists and that sort of thing.
Well, this has been delightful, hasn't it?
Yes, this whole punch has been delightful, and especially the tour of your shop, your bookstore.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
Jackie and I are blessed to be able to have books on Broadway as part of we call it the windmill team, because make our book available to readers in your area. Thank you very much.
Yes.
So we're at the end of our fun.
I'd say look into their book.
Yeah.
It's a good book.
Yes. Thank you. So Jackie, how can you close our program?
Well, it's a good time now to remind viewers to invite their friends and even their relatives to view these 1950s fun chats. So until next time, toodaloo.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Goodbye.